Thank you for joining. I am Genghis Shakhan. I'm the managing attorney here at Shakhan and Wilkerson Law Firm, and I'm here on behalf of myself as well as my counterpart, attorney Chelsea Wilkerson. We are a boutique law firm here in the state of Georgia, and we provide services, legal services, for those that need representation in the areas of criminal defense as well as family law, and that includes divorce as well as custody and men's rights. Thank you for joining us. This is a video that we will be discussing of the right to remain silent. Okay, so that will be what we're talking about today. I'll go through our roadmap here shortly. Before we get started, I do want to say to you, this video is for educational purposes only. By watching this video, it does not establish an attorney-client relationship between you and the law firm of Chacon and Wilkerson Law Firm. Of course, as always, if you need counsel or representation, you should make contact with a law firm, go through a consultation, and then after you've vetted that law firm properly, if you'd like to move forward with representation, you can. If you have a criminal case, we can assist you here in the state of Georgia. You can give us a call. We have a couple of numbers: 478-845-1213, as well as 404-999-9529. We'd be really happy to help you out. We take on cases, as I said, in family law as well as criminal defense. All right, that being said, why don't we go ahead and talk about what today's topic is? And it's going to be a discussion centered on the right to remain silent, a right that not too many people exercise like they should after they have been arrested. And so, just a really quick roadmap of what we're going to cover. Um, we're going to talk a little bit about that right, Fifth Amendment, why it exists, how police use those statements against you to build cases, common mistakes that we see people make, as well as when to ask for a lawyer and what to do if you are actually arrested. Okay. And so this is one of those powerful rights that too many people just give away. All right. And they don't exercise. And it absolutely devastates some of the cases that we work. And a lot of times, the evidence that is gathered is evidence that essentially the defendant or the detainee at the arrest has created or generated for the actual state and the prosecution. All right. So if you're arrested, one of the most single important things you can do is actually nothing at all. Okay. And what I mean by that is, at least when it comes to answering questions, you don't want to talk yourself into a criminal conviction, all right? Because many people, many, and I mean many, believe they can talk their way out of an arrest, all right? And so we're going to talk about how that rarely ever happens, okay? All right, so the right to remain silent, what exactly is it? The Fifth Amendment protects you from being compelled to essentially incriminate yourself, okay? And so what that simply means is you don't have to answer questions about the allegations against you. Okay, the Fifth Amendment protects you from having to do that. And so why the right exists is because for a few reasons, right? So people make mistakes under stress. Happens all the time. Stressful situation. Mistakes are going to be made. And so when people are arrested, they're oftentimes scared, they're angry, sometimes they're embarrassed, or they are confused. And so stress can lead to bad decisions. Okay. And when you're basically making these bad and poor decisions, they can essentially lead you to say things that you will regret later on. Right. And unfortunately, that stuff, is going to be potentially recorded. Sometimes police officers, more today, have on body cameras, or they might just essentially have there might be an audio recording. The police cruiser might pick something up on the camera. So you do want to just kind of be mindful of that stuff. So the biggest misconception that I see people have is they really say, "Hey, I'm innocent, and if I'm innocent, I should just explain myself in real time." And so it's not important that you don't try to tell your side of the story to the officer. Okay, it's it's a misguided belief that they're going to let you go once you tell your side of the story. All right. So the reality is that the officers are there and they are there to gather evidence. They are not deciding guilt or innocence on the spot. They are simply gathering evidence. Okay. And so the more you talk, if you have diarrhea of the mouth, the more evidence you are generating. Okay. And so they'll help you, right? They will help develop that evidence. All right. So everything that you say, you have to understand that it's going to be used against you. It's going to be used against you in court. So when you are Mirandized, you want to pay attention to what they are saying in the Miranda warning, but at the same time, you want to pay attention to what the Miranda does not say, right? So it does say anything that you say can be used against you, but it does not say anything that you say can be used to help you, okay, or assist you, okay. And so it's important that you kind of keep that in mind, when you have been arrested, is that your statements are going to become evidence, okay? And you may not remember, what you said during that arrest because of the stress of that situation. And so here's why talking can actually hurt you, okay? One of the reasons is just the inconsistency. So oftentimes people rarely tell the same story twice, okay? And you've experienced this in elementary school with the telephone exercise, right? And the goal is to communicate something to your classmate, and your classmate communicate something to another classmate, and it's supposed to make its way around the room. And too often, whatever was initially communicated is not the same message that's received by the end of the exercise. Okay, and so these inconsistencies will exist, and it's going to absolutely crush you and your credibility in the courtroom. Then there's just the issue of memory problems. Okay, so sometimes, again, as I indicated earlier, stress just really impacts memory. You may not remember what you said, okay, or what was said to you, all right, and how you responded. And so that's why silence is golden, all right. And there are misunderstandings. Statements can be made, they can be misheard, they can be misinterpreted, right? So you may have responded to something in real time, and a jury might take that same statement and take it out of context. And so one of the ways to avoid that is you just don't make any statements, okay? So they won't be misinterpreted by anyone or taken out of context. And then, of course, just in explaining yourself, oftentimes, even when you're innocent, these innocent explanations can accidentally support the prosecution's case, because you might make partial admissions, okay? And so you may be, not admitting to certain crimes, but you might be making partial admissions, which again are going to be very damaging when it comes to your case overall. Okay. So, one thing that you really want to bear in mind is that police officers are trained interviewers. Okay. These guys are trained. Okay. So, their job, as I already indicated, is to gather information. So, they're going to try to build rapport, they're going to try to gain trust, and they're going to try to encourage conversation. All right. And so some of the contact, some of the common tactics that they use may be things saying like, hey, help me understand, or saying things like, well, tell me your side of the events. I've talked to the other guy. Like, you tell me what happened in your own words, or we're trying to help you, or be honest with me, and it'll go easier, right? So these are some common tactics that you'll hear from officers to really encourage you to get talking. All right. And again, they are at the same time really building a case against you, or helping at least the prosecutor build a case against you by developing evidence, right, at the source. And so it's important to know that you're not required to answer these substantive questions surrounding the allegations against you. Okay, so this is again one of the reasons why you do strongly need to think about just remaining silent. If you follow us, and you've seen there's some video, I believe previously we talked about, can police lie to you? Um, Absolutely, yes, they can lie to you. All right, they do lie. Okay, so they are permitted to use deception during interviews, and some people don't really understand that. So some examples: they may claim to have evidence they don't actually have. They may claim to have witnesses that have identified you, or may claim that a co-defendant is talking about the case, or they've identified you as well, right, as the main culprit. And so it's important that, you bear this in mind because, oftentimes because of the deception, it encourages folks who have been detained to kind of start blabbing and sharing, a little bit about what exactly is going on in their criminal case. And so you want to kind of beware of that. The best thing to do is just to zip it and just let your lawyer do the talking for you. So the most common mistakes that we do see are trying to explain to the officer. Again, that officer is this there gathering information. That officer is not the judge. Okay, that officer is not the jury, and you will probably not be released. Okay, on the spot, trying to talk your way out of that arrest, right? Or trying to talk your way out of that traffic stop. And so sometimes that leads to partial admissions. We just covered that. Talking after asking for a lawyer, right? So if you ask for an attorney, then just shut up afterward, okay? And just be quiet. Put your lips together. Many people I've found are just uncomfortable with silence. And so in this instance, though, it is just in your best interest to put your lips together and don't bump your gums and share information with the officers. Okay. And then talking in the patrol car after an arrest. Sometimes people get in the control car, and again, their nerves, they're scared, and so they just begin essentially chit chatting, all right, or oversharing, or talking in the holding cells, or talking on jail phones. That's another big one, right? You're talking to your homeboys, you're talking to your parents, you're talking to friends, reaching out to people, even if you've had a first appearance and the judge has said you're not to have contact, for example, if it's a family violence, you're not to have contact with the victim. Folks hop on the call, sometimes talk to the victim. They're not supposed to make contact with the victim. And those jail calls are recorded. Those statements can be used against you in court to show a couple things. One, that you've already violated the court order not to be in contact. And then, of course, two, you can make some statements on the phone, even say things like, "Hey, I hit you because," right? So you're admitting, right? There's admissions that are happening via those telephone calls, and so you want to be very, very careful when it comes to that jail phone. That is you got to assume that every call is being recorded. You never want to discuss the facts of your case. You don't want to, really talk about the witnesses or evidence, or even your defenses. You don't want to talk about that stuff. Usually, those calls are recorded, and the prosecutors get their hands on those calls all the time. So, many criminal cases, you just have to understand they include recorded jail calls as evidence. You hear a lot of it, you see a lot of it in discovery. So, you do want to avoid that. You want to avoid talking to your friends and family really about your case. Statements made to friends, families, and significant others can sometimes be used as evidence as well. The social media warning, that should be obvious. You want to avoid posting things on Facebook, TikTok, IG, Snapchat, because prosecutors can use that stuff against you. Okay, and so that stuff might resurface and be used as evidence. And the things that you should say, when you are being arrested or detained, you do want to be polite. You want to be respectful. But you want to be clear, right? You want a good, simple response is, "Hey, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, and I want an attorney," and that's it. Okay, stop talking after that, right? You're going for a ride. You're probably going to be booked. Just kind of keep that in mind. But you're probably not going to talk your way out of that arrest, right? All right. So what happens after you ask for a lawyer is that you should stop answering questions, stop explaining yourself, stop defending yourself. So there might be allegations that are made. They might be mischaracterizations of what happened, mischaracterizations of who you are at your core. However, your goal, your job is to, again, remain silent. Okay. And so then you just want to wait for counsel. Now, if you've already talked, and frequently that happens, you don't want to panic, but many cases can still be defended, but you do want to contact your lawyer. You do want to contact your lawyer and tell them what exactly that you have said, and be be concise and clear, right? Let your attorney know what has been communicated to the police, whether that's to an investigator or whether that's to an officer or a detective, so that your attorney can, really begin to prepare a defense. All right. And so the biggest takeaway from this video for you should be that silence is not an admission of guilt. Okay. And it's okay to exercise silence, and it's a constitutional right that you have if you are being detained. It is your lawyer's job. It's not yours. It is your lawyer's job to do the talking. It's not yours. It's your lawyer's job. And I'm saying that, and I'm reiterating it because it's important that you understand that it is your lawyer's job to do the talking. It is not, it is not your job. You will not set yourself up for success by trying to chat your way out of the arrest. Okay, so avoid creating evidence against yourself. That is a big, 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 big deal when it comes to working these cases. Okay, so most people, many people are convicted simply because they could not remain silent, right? And they just it everything they said was it was a treasure trove of evidence that was eventually used against them in their prosecution of their case. Okay, so people create serious problems for themselves by continuing to talk, and so you want to absolutely avoid that. Or you're going to get crushed in court, right? If you're talking on that jail phone, if you're talking to the officers at arrest, if you're talking to investigators, there was a song when I was a young person said, "You talk too much, you never shut up." Okay, and if that is you, then you are going to absolutely find yourself in a painful position when it comes to really really trying to defend yourself in a criminal action. All right. So when in doubt, remain calm, be respectful, remain silent, and ask for an attorney. Again, as always, if you have a criminal case, we'd be more than happy to assist you. If you're looking for an attorney, feel free to give us a call, 404 or 478-845-1213. We'd be happy to talk to you via a consultation, and we can make a decision about whether or not we are a good fit and whether or not we can help you when it comes to any kind of criminal defense matter. Okay. All right. It's been a pleasure talking to you. If this has been helpful, make sure you like, make sure you follow. If you have a friend, family member that is going through a criminal case, and they need this information, make sure you share it with them. And then, of course, make sure you follow us for everything criminal defense, family law, divorce, child custody, as well as men's rights. There are a plethora of videos here on YouTube, long form videos that are going to be really helpful. We also have, if you have a child custody or divorce, we have books that are available for purchase on Amazon. You can hit the link in our bio, and you can go to our website. Those books are available at the bottom of the website, I believe, in the resources tab, or you can go to Amazon and you can find the books. They'll be available there for you as well. All right, my name has been Genghis Shakhan. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a great one.